So our next workshop is presented by Tereza Vaňková and Alleanna Clark. So Tereza is a software engineer at Deepnote, focusing on front end, mostly React development. She also founded and organized the educational community React Girls, where she helps women learn to code with React along with other developers, helping women to learn coding with React. Alleanna is a community advocate at Deepnote, having had previous experience in data science education at UC Berkeley. She works to lower the barrier to entry into tech and research through collaboration and creating learning materials. Tereza and Alleanna will present the following workshop: Exploratory Data Analysis using personal data from Strava and Apple Watch. So with this in mind, please welcome Tereza and Alleanna.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for a great introduction. It is really an honor for us to be here with you and have this workshop on topic exploratory data analysis using personal data from Strava and Apple Watch. And as it's been said, my name is Tereza, and I am software engineer in Deepnote and also founder of the React Girls community, where we teach women how to code in React. And Anna, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself if you want?
Sure. Hi, my name is Alleanna. It's nice to virtually see all of you. Thank you, Gabby and Neha, for the great presentation. I am a community advocate at Deepnote with data science experience and specifically in education. So I'm excited to be here at this workshop with you today.
Amazing. So here's agenda. Let me quickly talk about workshop agenda. First 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about setup and motivation. Then Alleanna will tell us some theory about exploratory data analysis, and she will also introduce the Deepnote notebook just really quickly. After that, we will move to our notebook, where we will show you some data analysis we prepared for this workshop. And in the end, we will have some times for your questions. So feel free to ask anything here in Zoom Q&A section during our whole workshop. Okay. And we hope that in the end of our session, you will be able to explain the basic concepts of EDA, understand how to perform EDA, extract your data from Strava and smartwatch, and analyze your own data, own personal data using Jupyter Notebook. All right, so now a little bit about the setup. So you have already received email with our setup bullet points, but let me quickly go through them. We would like to go to deepnote.com. And on the right corner, you can click on Get Started button and then sign up easily with your email or your GitHub. And do not worry, it is all free and you don't need to pay anything. Then we will also we also send you a link to our notebook, which you can duplicate by clicking on 3 dots on the right corner and then to the duplicate button. And we will show you later how to do it in Notebook. And you will be able to duplicate whole project with our data file, or if you already have your own data ready, you can just upload it to the notebook we shared with you. And then we will go to do some analyzing. But before that, Anna, could you tell us something about EDA?
Sure. So what we will be going through kind of today and demonstrating in our notebook is a little bit about exploratory data analysis. If you've been in any sort of statistics class or math class, you've probably conducted some EDA, and it's used by data science to analyze the data set and summarize the main characteristics, a lot of times including visualizations. I have a little carousel here of some common visualizations. And also just some cool looking ones that kind of show you what the possibilities are. But a lot of what data science will do is explore in order to further inform the model in the future. So it makes it easier to discover patterns, to spot anomalies, to test certain hypotheses, or check assumptions that we have, especially depending on the domain of your data. An EDA is primarily used to see what the data can reveal in the future and maybe inform what questions you will end up asking. So a little bit about our goal for today. We are going to go through a really fun data set from Tereza and kind of learn about how to go about the process of learning this preliminary information about your data, and also how to conduct these simple visualizations and as it relates to different types of data that you may have. Certain statistical techniques are more common for certain domains. For example, if you have a trend and you want to see the relationship between two variables, you may want to have your goal being create a scatter plot of these variables to understand more about what you should go deeper into. And EDA was originally thought to be developed by a mathematician named John Tukey in the 1970s, and the techniques are a widely accepted method in the data discovery process. The steps that we'll be taking today, these kind of differ depending on what you want to do, but ultimately we start with importing libraries and loading in your data set, initially checking for missing values and visualizing where those missing values are. A lot of the exploratory data analysis and the data cleaning process is going to be understanding the best practices for replacing missing values and understanding the different data types that exist in your information. Part of these decisions on how to replace missing values, whether you add them in as an average or add them in or take out the rule altogether, are decisions that are made by data analysts and data scientists that can eventually skew or affect your results later. So it's important that we're mindful in the ways that we interact with our missing data and imputation of the missing values. And then finally, number 5, which all of us, depending on your coding level, will be able to interact with, is the asking analytical questions and deciding kind of what visualizations we want to go deeper into. So that is kind of our final step that we'll get to today, but EDA can span from this and more, depending a lot on what your end goal will be with your data. So we're excited. The platform that we're going to be using today is called Deepnote. This is where Tereza and I work, and we are building a collaborative data workspace that brings teams together to be able to work simultaneously. And so that is kind of what we'll go into. I'll show some more slides, just explaining a little bit about the platform if you haven't been able to take a look at it yet. So we offer, this is what it looks like. We offer a way to collaborate in real time, almost like a shared document, where you can see where your partners or if you're working on a project together, your teammates are working directly in the code cells. There's also commenting features and link sharing. So like how I shared the link with all of you, this is something that we have in order to kind of create a seamless environment for you to work together. And it's also for the purpose of being able to learn, because a lot of times I know that I learned a lot when I was with other people. I'm going to pause really fast just because I got a message that there was an issue with the Zoom or some technical difficulties. I don't know if this is happening, but I wanted to make some space in case that is the case. I will continue, but if that is an issue, maybe we can look into that. Okay, great.
Alleanna, yeah, it's going smoothly. You
Okay,
can
awesome.
continue. Thank you for
Okay.
checking.
Awesome, great. So another part about our platform that we're going to be using is you're able to reproduce results. So especially in science, reproducibility is really important for us to have transparency with our analysis and our projects. In addition to that, we offer switching between SQL and Python and R. So the notebook is compatible with all three, and SQL and Python can be switched off within the same notebook, which I've used many times and is definitely eased in my transition. And then we also have features for visualizing data. So that's part of our EDA that we'll show today, as well as creating a platform for you to be able to learn about IDE and how to create production ready code. And then if you are learning new tools or want to integrate with tools you already use, the integrations feature is something that I don't think we'll be demonstrating today, but if you have any questions, please let me know. You're able to integrate Deepnote in with your current databases or like Google Drive, as well as GitHub. So in addition, this is something we will go over. We'll be able to track our changes and save our project, kind of learn how like that version control works, which again was something that I know I struggled with a lot at the beginning. So that's something that we're making seamless as well. Awesome. Thank you, Tereza. So now I'm going to share my screen instead.
Yes, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, great.
Just let me...
And we are in Deepnote. So
yes, just a sec here.
are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are able to see our screens.
Okay. So I am going to start right here. And we have a notebook. I'm going to pass it to Tereza to talk a little bit about her trip, but we're going to get into our personal analytics. And it's really exciting. So go ahead.
Thank you so much. Well, firstly, I will just introduce what exactly is going on in Deepnote notebook. So on the left side, you can see your workspace. Here we name it Women in Data Science, and you can also see folders if you have some, and your files. On the right side, on the top, you can see three dots I was talking about, and if you click on them, then you can click on the duplicate project button, and if you do it, pop-up will show, and pop-up will ask you to sign into Deepnote to your workspace account. And on the right side, you can also see project files where you can find our data file. If you can show them, Alleanna, where we have a data file. Yeah, it's here. And as well as you can see the pictures here as well, we used in notebook. Okay, and finally in the middle, there is a notebook where you can write and execute your code. Great. So now let's move to story about the data we use. And let me introduce you Camino de Santiago, also known as Way of St. James. It is a network of pilgrims ways leading to Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Spain. And I did the journey on May this year, and it was an amazing experience, not just because of physical activity and not just because of all the walking, but you have a great time to clear your head and also meet with amazing people from all around the world. And I tracked all my walks with Garmin watch, and I uploaded them to Strava so I could share them with my family and with my friends and also with you right now. Just in case you don't know, Strava is an application where you can track your sport activities such as walking, running, swimming, etc. So I started my journey in Oviedo, as you can see in the map picture, yes, here. And I was walking for 10 days and I did 321 kilometers, which is about 200 miles. And under the picture, you can see my 10 days data in a table. Yes, actually, this is the data we use for data analysis. So if I could ask you, Alleanna, can you move to data analysis right now?
Sounds good. Yeah. So we're gonna kind of explore Tereza's data together. We'll just kind of go through the steps. of how we start out. So first, it's even just nice to, if you're able to, and you have a data frame, visualize your data. We did that in the sidebar over here, but this is just like part of our loading. Pandas, if you're not familiar, is the like main Python data science library that's used a lot. So we'll import libraries such as pandas as well as other visualization libraries to start out with, and then put it into a data frame. So depending on how you get your data, in this case, it was a CSV. When we go to Apple Watch, you'll see that it's in a different format. That is part of the first step, is understanding the best way to export and import the data into your analysis tool. But we'll start out here with our loading of our libraries. Deepnote has a lot already built in, and so you just have to import, but some may require some installation. And then we can assign it to our data frame and look a little bit at some preliminary summary at the top here when you call your data frame. So what I'm going to do, I'll just kind of walk you through like what I think of anytime I do EDA. So I see a data set like this. I see it's not very large, so I don't need to really worry too much about that, but that can sometimes be a factor. I'll look at the column names, see what we're looking at. I know that this is a data set that spans for 10 days and is like Tereza's walking journey. So I want to get some insights based on that, but that's all I really know so far. So I'll use a .info command, which is really nice from Pandas, and we'll look and see if there's missing values, which was that first step that we talked about in the presentation. And I can see that there's no missing values, so I don't need to worry about that yet. And I can look at the data types, and I can see that some of these are integers, some of them are floats, and I don't need to change the data types or anything like that. So that's really helpful for me. But if let's say some of these were strings, I can't run mathematical operations on strings, so I would need to edit it that way. Next, since we're going into an analysis, probably visualizing, we don't really want columns that are irrelevant to us. Especially with reproducibility. So notebooks do a great service of making our analysis reproducible for others. And if we have a lot of extra columns, especially as we get into larger data sets, it's just not going to be readable for our colleagues or project partners or our audience. So for this example, we know that each one of these has its own day. And so we don't need the upload ID that exists up here. It's a unique number that can sometimes help us, but in our case here, we don't need that long number as part of our data, and it could get confusing. So I'm just going to drop it right here. And the way that I run the code cells is by coming over and either pressing the play button or doing Shift Enter. And you can also test it out yourselves. I think you would need to duplicate it into your own workspace. Right now, everybody with that link should have comment access in order to add a comment, which you're able to do if you'd like. And you can add a comment to ask any questions following, or honestly, just ask them in the Q&A. But I just wanted to point out that if you did want to leave some comments, you all have access to do that. And then following the dropping of the column, a lot of times we'll look at the description of our column names and want to change it to something a little bit more relevant. So in this case, we're going to be renaming the name column, which I think is a default from the Strava API, to day, because it's more descriptive. And then we want to change our type column name to activity, because it's also more descriptive. If we just kept type, we don't know what type it is. It didn't mean data type, or does it mean a different type of time, or we really don't have that description. So activity lets us know that this was a walk activity. So we're going to run this cell to rename it. And then we look at the top, we kind of see our column names, and everything looks good. Awesome. Okay, so now the next kind of process I'm thinking of is, okay, so I know that we have our speed, I know we have moving times. I wasn't on Tereza's journey, so I don't really know which day to look at. I'm going to kind of think about, like, is there any days maybe she walked a lot more than the others that will skew my average? So if I'm trying to look at like her average speed, I want to make sure that I'm not skewing her average speed if one day she just like ran really, really fast. So that can apply to a lot of different scenarios where if you have like 1 month of the year that your sales are really, really high, and we have to make sure we at least note that when going into our analysis. So I use a visualization library called Plotly to make a box plot, which gives us some information about the skew. If we hover over, we can look at the median distance, and then also like the different quartile ranges. So we can see that like generally the median is like closer to the lower amount of distance, but it does skew lower, but some of the days she probably walked a lot more, which is probably affecting this, but there aren't any like distinct outliers or points that we see here. So we're pretty good on that. As we're getting into our visualizations, which I talked about as being our goal in EDAs to come up with some good descriptive visualizations, we'll kind of do an overview of the different types. A lot of this depends on your data. We'll be doing a lot of bar charts today just because of the nature of this data, but if you have your own data and there are distributions, or you want to look at the frequency of something, that's when you'd use a histogram. We're going to be comparing different elements. And I wanted to point out that a lot of times people use pie charts. And the reason that I would always choose bar charts is it just is a little bit more descriptive in our eye to be able to understand the differences. Obviously, you use what is best for your exploration, but a lot of times pie charts don't give us as whole of a picture as like a bar chart might. And then we went over a box plot. And then another really common one is a scatter plot. So a scatter plot lets you see the relationship between different variables. So if you wanted to see how her distance affects her speed, you'd be able to run a scatter plot and maybe do a little bit more of statistical analysis on that. So as we get into our visualizations, first what we wanted to look at was the different days of her journey. This kind of seemed like the most natural progression. So the way that if you wanted to do this on your own, you'd be able to come and make a chart here, pick the data frame, and then use the drop-down menu. But we have one made for you already. And so we just chose day, and then we chose distance. And then let's say she had some that were walking and some that were running, and we wanted to see the difference. That's where our activity color would come in. And then similar to the distance, we can kind of look at her average speed per day. And it looks like day 5, she had like longer of a distance, but in day 5 here is a pretty average speed was pretty comparable to the other days. If you want it to be a horizontal bar chart, you would just switch the axes. And then this is my favorite visualization so far, because we can notice this pattern, right? Or like a specific thing we can ask a further question about. So that's part of our exploration. I'm looking at this and we made the elevation gain be our color. And when we look up here, we can see that day 5 does have like longer of a distance, but when we look at our day versus the time moving and the like elevation gain, we can see this one be like really dark blue. And so I wonder, like, maybe she climbed a mountain that day or something. I don't know. Tereza, can you give us some insight on that?
Actually, there is a picture under the bar, and yeah, this day 5, I walked a road called Hospitales, and it was mountain, and there were beautiful views and horses, and yeah, it was really amazing. I have to say it was the first day.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so we can see that reflected in our data visualization. So when you're going through your own like personal analysis, maybe in your Apple Watch or Strava, you get to kind of keep in mind the different days that you remember. And that's the kind of domain knowledge that we want to apply to like any type of data, is bringing in like the experience or understanding kind of maybe why our data behaves the way that it does. So now that we've kind of gone over like a brief preliminary exploration pathway, a big part about this was gathering our data. So Tereza will kind of go over how to get data from your own Strava API. Is the way that APIs work is they collect your data and you're able to pull from it, whether that's from Strava or from other sources that also collect data. So I'll pass it to her.
Thank you, and thank you for amazing data analysis. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Yeah, and right now we will look on how to getting data from Strava API. Actually, I wrote down a few steps how to do that, and right now we can go through them one by one, and you can try to yourself, or you can see the record of this workshop and do it later as you want. So the step number one is create Strava account on strava.com. It's for free as well, and you have to add or track at least one activity. Then you log in and you create an API application. You have to go to strava.com/setting/API and fill out a form. You can see the picture of the form under the point 2, and there you just fill everything you need. You just add your application name, choose category, etc., etc., and then there is authorization called like domain, and you can use localhost as it. Then point number 3. Yeah. So you will get your API application. How to navigate to that? You have to hover over your profile icon in the top right corner and go to settings. And yeah, it might happen that you can see the navigation bar called my API application. Then you just need to go back and do it again, do again the step number 2. And after that, your application look like that, and you have your client ID, client secret ID, and your access tokens. And you want to record your client ID and your client secret, which we will use in the code later. Yeah. And as you will need access token to get your data, but unfortunately, we can't use the one we have on the page because it's provided only with access level of read. And we need access level of read all, so we have to do a little hack. It's in point number 6, where you just copy paste the URL you have under the point 6 to your browser. Instead of your client ID, you add your real ID you have in API application and hit the enter. You should get authorization page, yes, with a smiley dog. So you should get this page. If you do, you just click on authorize, and your browser will probably error, but that's okay, because your URL will look like the one under the point 7, and it's instead of some code, you will see your token beneath. Yes, and at the last point, you have to, or you can copy this code we have in a notebook, or you just you can use our notebook and use this code. And in the line 5, instead of my client ID and my secret ID and my code, yes, you use your own. Actually, you have to use it in on line 5 and change it in the URL as well. Yes, of URL. Yeah, okay, exactly. And then you just click on run code, execute, and you don't need to click it, yeah, because we already did. And yeah, here you can see all my data from Strava. Actually, the first one is from today. We had bike ride in the Deepnote. And you can see my last 11 activities from Strava. And under the table, I added a little chart where you can see name of the activities, distances, and also different types of the activities I have in Strava, such as ride, run, workout, etc. Yeah, this is it. If you tried and you will not be able to do it, let me know, and I will try to help you go through the process.
Thank you, Tereza, for the instructions. I think this, if you do copy the code into your own notebook, you only really have to edit these with your own client ID. I did see, we're going to answer all the Q&A at the end, but because this is like kind of what we're talking about now, I did see a question about like the benefits of using Strava versus like a Google Watch data or like Apple Watch data. And so I haven't used Strava actually, and I'm about to go through the how you import your Apple Watch data, but and I'll ask Tereza to add to this too. But one of the things that comes to my mind is the Strava API. You're able to customize a lot more, and like when I was uploading my Apple Watch data, it was such a large file that it made it difficult to do things with. It was in an XML format, and it was like tough for me. So I think that could be one way. And then maybe Tereza, if you have anything to share on why Strava, why you would like Strava.
Yeah. So actually, I don't have specific answer for that, but I would say like all my friends use Strava, and we like to watch each other workouts and rides. So maybe this is the reason. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of things you can see on Strava, and a lot of data you can personalize.
Sounds good. Thanks. Okay, so to our kind of final part of the workshop before we get into our Q&A is the importing of Apple Watch data. So like I mentioned before, the Apple Watch data can be large depending on how long you've had your Apple Watch for. It does track a lot of different things, which we'll go through. And so if you have an Apple Watch and you go to your health app with the little heart on it, there should be an option to look at your personal profile, and then you can export all health data. And so that will just email you a zip file with all of your health data. And so keeping in mind, depending on how long you've had it, it may take a while to run. This specific data came after having a watch for about 2 months to show us how to do it. But if there's other ways to store the data, that may have to come later. But I will just share this code with you. You're able to upload, or what I did is uploaded the export XML file to the file directory over to the right, and then you can open the path and parse through the XML file. I just looked at the workout health data and put it into data frame workouts. So this is very different than the data set that we had from Strava that was cleaned and had it by day, right? We may have to change a lot of different column names. We look at our source name, and some of it is from like the Nike Run Club app. So it does take in a lot of sources, which is really helpful. And then we're able to look at all these different dates as well. So this is like one import, but our workshop today did focus on our Strava and the process with that. So we can add more content to this later, but I just made sure we wanted to address it. And so now that we're at the end of our EDA, let's say we want to share our preliminary findings with someone. How do we do that? So the same way that I shared the link with all of you is there's like a share project button, and you can manage the permission. So right now, I think everybody that has the link is able to comment on the project, but you can change that as you wish. And then if you would like to publish your work, this is how you would publish it. So we can share it. We can decide what we want to include, if we want it in an article format or in more of a dashboard format where you're able to move around the different cells that you have. This is kind of long, so we'll keep it as article for now. And then you're able to manage also the permissions of that. So just as a little demonstration, I'll publish my changes, and we say it's published. It says it's published successfully. So I will go to open, and we can kind of see this loading our new article. So normally I wouldn't include every single image. I would probably only include our different charts and graphs, and then some explanations from our markdown cells. But you're able to edit that directly in the publishing editor through Deepnote. So if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to put it in the Q&A. But that is the end. I think we went through pretty quickly. And so before we get into the rest of the Q&A, I did see some people ask about our visualization. So I'll do that really quickly first, and then we can maybe go into some of the other wonderful questions we have. The ones that we made were part of Deepnote's dropdown, but I can also demonstrate how to do this in Python code. So similar to the box plot up here, Plotly Express is like kind of what I like to use. And so what if I wanted to do like a bar chart, I think it's like dot bar. I'll double check, but it would be from this library, and the charts would look very pretty and similar to these. And then I'm gonna double check and come back to it, but I can do like a live demonstration too of this bar chart. But what we did for these was just make a chart. And so the reason behind this, instead of maybe using a Python library that is more robust, is because of the ease of access and the speed in which we can get some of these preliminary charts to explore our data. So like I may look at this chart and be like, okay, I really like the way this looks, but I want something different and I want to customize it differently. So because I was able to see how the bar chart looked here and get some insights from the data, now I'm going to go and look at the visualization library that I would like to go further with and make it look really pretty in order to be published to my dashboard. So I'll do like I'll find that like code that I have for these in Python to show you all, but it's a great question. And that's kind of how we did these charts. If you want to duplicate it, feel free to go in the notebook. Once you duplicate the notebook in there, you're able to play around with it yourself too. But yeah, that concludes kind of our workshop, but I'm excited. I think our Q&A is going to be pretty fruitful, so we can get started on that.
Well, first, I wanted to say thank you to both Alleanna and Tereza. Great information. Looks like a lot of people are excited related to some of the, content based on the questions that we're seeing in the Q&A panel. I know that some of our colleagues are marking off some of the questions as answered, so maybe skipping around a few of the questions. So for example, I believe there was an answer to, can you please share the code used to plot the different types of charts? So we're going to just mark that off. So we'll mark that off in a second or two, and we'll continue with the next question. So can we export the code in Python from Deepnote for the very nice charts that you built? You may have already highlighted this, but just to recap if possible.
Yes, so for these charts, they are in the Deepnote feature, so there isn't Python code for these specific ones. If you would like to download these specific charts, you're also, especially for the one that we made here, let me see where to go. Or if you want to like download any of this data to use yourself, they're in the file charts, but there's also like a download button in the bottom right corner once you download or once you run the cells. But as far as the code for these charts up here. Because they're bar charts, I'll make a code snippet like right now and put it in the chat, but these are not coded. They're done through the Deepnote platform.
Okay, thank you. And this is an API related question. So what is the benefit of using Strava to access watch data instead of using the company specific domain to access that data, such as Google, Samsung, or Apple?
I think maybe Tereza could talk a little bit more about the API part.
Well, yeah, I mean, the API part is that we just wanted to play with it a little bit because we already had the data in Strava and we are really curious. So maybe this is the reason why we use API, but you can tell more, Alleanna, if you think about something.
Yes, and Tereza, it sounds like part of it is a matter of familiarity. So that's, you know, what you had access to, and it was probably easier. So it goes to a comment that a person highlighted. So the person says, this is very cool. I tried the code to get data from Strava and it works great. So thank you for letting us know. And then this follows up with a question. So just to confirm, there is no API for Apple Watch, correct?
The API itself, I couldn't find one, but I am definitely open to being wrong about that. The way that when I looked to gather my Apple Watch data, it was through the app where they email you a zip file. And that was another benefit, I think, of Strava's API is the data itself was a lot easier to read, a lot easier to gather. The Apple Watch data was really large and kind of took a while. So that's something to know if you're deciding on what to use.
This is great.
Yeah. And I think there is API for Apple Watch. I just tried to Google something and I found some documentation about it. So I guess that there may be.
Yeah. So maybe it's an opportunity for the audience to maybe update the code. So
yeah, we can have some contributors maybe. If you'd like to contribute to our notebook, send me an email, Alleanna at Deepnote, and this is all collaborative. So you're able, I'll just give someone access and they can add it. Right now it was in a way to add it in with the import from Apple, but we can definitely go into the API the same way we did as Strava. So
awesome. And you know, to this note, and I believe the chat is working, so you know, maybe during this time frame or maybe even after the workshop, we can maybe share some of those links for individuals who are interested in doing a little bit more of the code. I know I am, so that's one item. Now, here's the next question. So for importing Apple Watch data, can we not choose to just get the last 5 days of data, for example?
When I was getting Apple Watch data, there was only that one button that I saw on the interface on my phone. Again, we wanted to add in the Apple Watch data to give an option, but our main API that we worked with today was Strava. So I am hoping there's a way to do that because it was that, but that was the only option that I was given as a user. But yeah, I think that would be really nice to be able to do that. So I hope there is a way, maybe in the API.
This is great. And then here's the next question. One of the last questions was from the previous workshop. So here's the next question. So the next step after performing the EDA would be to begin modeling. What model selection process would you consider to build a model for this data?
I can take this one, but yeah, that's a great segue and a great question. I think for this data specifically, something that I may want to start out with is learning about my, like if I started using Apple Watch because I was a really poor runner, so I'm gonna try to learn about the different factors maybe that go into my like mile times. So like if I wanted to maybe look at like either some type of regression, that would be like applicable to me. But I think there's a lot of opportunities to look at the different data that you're given depending on your tool and see how those things maybe affect a certain outcome. If your goal is to to get faster, or your goal is to be able to walk farther, I think the analysis that we can do here, there's a lot of opportunities to model like what's working and maybe predict where you're going to be heading in the future if you're going for a marathon or if or something else like that. But I think it's a great question. I'd love to have this be like a way of all of us like motivating each other to reach our goals. So that sounds good to you all.
Awesome. Community building through machine learning, which is, by the way, what's happening anyway during these work.
Yes,
so
I love
awesome.
it.
And then we have a question specific to Deepnote. So is there a limit in size of data that can be processed on Deepnote?
I don't know if Tereza, you want to answer this one. I can't do.
Yeah. So if you want to, you can, of course. But we are using Harvard machines, and there is a differences which machine you use. So it depends on which plan you are right now. So I don't know if it's a good answer, but I think Alleanna, you can
yeah,
I can
expand just a little bit. So yeah, we are hosted on the cloud. So as far as the power of it does affect our data. We do integrate with other databases. So if you have data stored in like an AWS or Snowflake or things like that, that's more, I guess, if there's like a lot of data. I think hopefully for something like personal analytics, we're able to maybe like use an API and not have to have large data sets. But yeah, if you are working with large data in another aspect, we do offer plans depending on the GPU that you need and things like that. But using it is free until like there's a really big burden on our machines.
Yeah, and you can see specific information in our pricing documentation, and there is like specific information about how big machine you can use.
And it does handle a lot before it gets there too.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a problem.
Right. And this makes sense for so many, I'm going to say, tools that are available to us for machine learning, where, you know, all these additional resources and packages that are available, you know, there's a lot of opportunity to work with large sets of data. So just have some, you know, packages we have to say, okay, do we use this one or something else or other settings, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then here's another question that just came in. So is there a level of security for the data? For example, hospital, I'm going to say hospital/healthcare data.
That is a great question. I come kind of from a public health background coming into data science, and this is definitely something that is there. We are, I forget the name of it. We are certified through a security clearance. I don't think it's HIPAA though. So HIPAA is the hospital data that, or the requirements for hospital data. So it would depend on exactly where that is going towards, but we do have like security clearances that I can definitely answer more in depth at a later date. But there is a level, but I don't know if hospital data is there yet. We're hoping to get there soon.
And also just to add to that, because this is an international audience, you know, we may be more familiar with some of this information related to different regions. So depending on the region where you're located, there may be some variance for the person who asked the question. So yeah, and they had some follow-up comments. I don't know if you see that in the Q&A panel, but the standard is SOC 2, and we're looking on HIPAA 2.
Oh yes, so 2. Thank you. It's in my mind, but yeah, where HIPAA is going to be coming hopefully in the future very soon. Thank you.
But yeah, for the international audience members, you know, there may be some variation that's out there too. And then a quick question related to the modeling part of the application. So a lot of times for many of the audience members, they may ask, oh, do I use a traditional machine learning approach versus using deep learning, where I'm going to use neural networks? You know, taking into consideration, you know, whatever factors you would like, you know, were you immediately thinking, oh, I'm definitely going to be using this machine learning model and not use deep learning? Or did those thoughts come up as a part of this example?
Yeah, I initially thought of more traditional methods just because I think this doesn't have as much of like a complex data path. Like when I'm thinking about deep learning, a lot of times I think about like text data, and there wasn't really a lot of that. It was more it was easier to work with. So this is something that I would really recommend, or a use case I would really recommend for teaching and learning, especially if you're new to machine learning and you want to kind of like start looking at some models, kind of see how it works, especially in something that you have experience with. That's where I went to. This is something that is like perfect for a workshop or perfect for like a first project, as opposed to like a deep learning, which would require, I think, more of a complex problem or complex questions to be answered.
Yes, and you bring up some great points. And I think that for a lot of people, their factors are going to be so broad when they
Yeah.
first start. So who knows? Like, for example, some people may say, oh, I'm going towards deep learning because I heard the accuracies were very high for this application, and then just go with that. But, you know, I think that you give some great advice, especially for a lot of the audience members here who may be newer and earlier in their machine learning journeys. So this is great. And I'm just looking at time, so we have about 9 minutes left. And I know in the Q&A panel, we don't have any more questions that I'm seeing just yet. So I'll just take this time to, you know, maybe ask a question or two and then, you know, get us to, but there's a question that just popped up. So I'll ask that question, maybe go into one more. So what's a great resource for learning about data visualization techniques at a beginner level?
This is a great question also. I have there are definitely some resources that I can send, like maybe in links, but what comes to mind initially, if you're looking for sample projects, I always would read from Towards Data Science when I was first learning, as well as some like YouTube channels of other, like I always liked looking at, you know, it was nice when people had their workshops where they would kind of walk you through step by step, especially with notebooks. I think if you're just starting out with data visualization techniques, looking at the notebooks and also looking at the libraries that you want to focus on, I would start with like a matplotlib, but then like things like Plotly and these libraries really help you even on their documentation websites, understanding the possibilities of what visualizations can do and kind of what they mean. But yeah, I don't know if Tereza or Louvair, if you have other recommendations for resources, but that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I have a few URLs I could share as well, but basically YouTube videos are amazing.
Yeah, I agree with the both of you. And one other source too that I love, Towards Data Science, because it tries to keep it at a level where I think they aim to try to be tool agnostic. And they're like, oh yeah, use box plots. Everybody has box plots or something like that. So yeah, Towards Data Science, but I really like all the resources that you mentioned. And if you can't for some reason share them now, you know, definitely after the workshops are finished, you can, you know, share them as well, and we can share them with the audience members. And I see another question that is very specific to Deepnote.
Okay.
So is there a way we can get updates when the data through Deepnote is secure on the HIPAA level?
Yeah, I think once that comes, we'll definitely be posting about it on our social media. So if you like follow Deepnote HQ on Twitter or LinkedIn, even if you like, you can add me on LinkedIn or things like that. These are all things that are pretty big news. So we'll definitely be posting about it on our socials, as well as like probably send an email out to users as well.
Yeah. We have a newsletter we send to our users, and also we have a beautiful landing page where we will add these new things.
I'll just make sure that person highlights that too, so they can see it. This is great. And yes, so as someone else in the Q&A panel pointed out, a lot of the different resources that I think many of you highlighted, if not others. For example, I see Kaggle. Yes, Kaggle.
Oh, yes, Kaggle, perfect.
Is another one where, well, you know what? So thinking about the data itself, yeah. So Kaggle, we can explore, try out the data sets, and they mentioned a few others that are listed in the Q&A panel that I'm sure many of us have heard of. And if you have not, this is a great opportunity to learn more with the other resources that are listed in the Q&A panel.
One thing I will highlight as well that I'm directly involved with is our Deepnote community. So we have a lot of community members that make projects and publish them in our Deepnote community. I'll put it in the chat. I think it's community.deepnote.com. Let me know if that doesn't work, but if you look at community at Deepnote, that is where we also have a Q&A section, and a lot of people who collaborate on our notebooks share them. And you can see like people make really cool visualizations and projects for fun, which is like just also really cool, and it falls really closely to our personal analytics as well.
Okay, and someone just put in a link in the Q&A panel. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Luba.
Thank you, Luba. Yeah, so I was like, thank you. And here is, I guess, maybe this is our last question. This is going to be an interesting answer, I can tell. Is there a top voice or influencer that you recommend to follow the most?
Oh.
This is within the realm of, I think, data science, machine learning, AI. So just to narrow it down.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it depends on what I'm looking at. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Can you think of anyone off the top of your head?
No, actually, it's really great question. I follow a few people on Instagram, but I don't remember their names.
I know
I love Katie Bauer. I think she's great.
Yeah.
There's also I went to UC Berkeley, and there were, when I was younger at UC Berkeley, there was like triplets that were a little older than me, and so I kind of heard about them, and they're on Twitter, and I just think they're really cool. They started Data Angels, so if you look up Data Angels, also like a resource for women in data science. I love seeing their posts as well.
Great.
But yeah, that's a good question.
And I know someone in the Q&A panel mentions, Andrew Ng.
Oh yeah.
And there's others, but I think you raised an excellent point. So obviously we're here as a part of the WIDS workshop series. So if we could find that intersectionality between, yes, it's data science, but there's some women influencers too that we could highlight. I think you raise a good point. Yeah, and there's another woman that I really gave a talk at summer communities. Her name is Britt. And I would count her as an influencer, but she also talks a lot about like DEI and data and stuff, and I really like following her. So I think if you even just look up Britt on LinkedIn, that's what I follow her on. But absolutely, absolutely. And I think that there's so many others that could be listed, but once again, information we can share afterwards. So this is great. And we have about, it looks like 3 minutes left. So just to give you both the floor for the last few minutes, I don't see any other questions just yet, but, are there any kind of final words or thoughts you have for the audience members who stayed for your workshop, just in terms of, go through this file again and try your own data or anything else? You said it before, but maybe just to reiterate 1 or 2 items. Yeah, I think what would be really cool to see, so right now, everybody kind of has access to this notebook. It's probably, working really hard to have us all on there at once, but if you do have any comments, please leave them on there. And if you'd be willing to maybe share and go a little bit further with our EDA, we would love to see that. So I'm going to put my email in the chat. But any sort of way you share it with us, like LinkedIn to Twitter, my email, we'll see it. And so if you're able to maybe add something there, then we can also make this as a resource for others who want to engage in this. I think also the Locally Optimistic Slack has like a little like runners group channel, if anybody's part of that. So I just think it'd be really cool to start having something like this be part of like the way that we get to learn together. So that's all I've said.
Yeah,
do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I totally do agree, and sending my email as well, because I would love to see more notebooks with your data analysis and everything. So yeah, I agree.
Excellent. Well, thank you both, Alleanna and Tereza. Thank you for your workshop. Thank you for sharing this information with us. And with that in mind, take care, and we'll move on to the next workshop. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.